Right, we are here. We are live. We are with Jessica Saxton. Um, we don't have a fancy theme song for this, so I mean,
We do
ta-da!
actually. We do. It's We Shall Be Free song.
We do. Okay,
So
well,
yeah, I'll
is that
send
on?
them over
Is that
to
on
you.
your channel?
It's yeah. I have 5 songs on YouTube. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. I will pop over there. We will play one of those songs for the closing. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. Um, you are a little bit further away from your mic, so I don't know. Can you get a little closer? Oh,
Is that
super
better?
close. Yeah, that's a little better. All right. So I know you are traveling, and we are just going to muddle through any sort of obstacles that comes along with traveling and doing a live stream. But I'm sure our chat will be patient with us. Um, so people asked me in the last live stream, like, what was this going to be about? And I was like, I might be too close to answer that question from a broad sort of. From a specific standpoint. So I just kind of answered broadly that you guys are you're fighting for our Fourth Amendment rights, and you're doing it from the top down. You are bringing about change from judges, prosecutors, county commissioners, and getting the people who don't deserve that sort of power kind of out of there. I don't know if that's accurate. Could you maybe speak to
Love
that?
it.
And
I'm impressed. You're close. It's
am I
based on
close?
the
Good.
Fifth Amendment. Yeah, it's the Fifth Amendment. But you're spot on as far as the rights and the constitutional rights that we have been deprived of for a very, very long time.
Okay. So that being said, why don't you refresh our my memory and our listeners' memories as to what exactly then is the Fifth Amendment?
Okay, the Fifth Amendment, Clause 1 says that no person should be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on presentment or indictment by a grand jury. So what that
Okay.
means,
I was going to say, break that down as if I were a fifth grader.
okay. So what that means is anytime you are arrested for it would be a capital or infamous crime. So a capital crime is anything punishable by death, and an infamous crime is anything punishable by more than 1 year in prison. So any of your felony charges, you should have been indicted by a grand jury. And that's not
Okay.
happening.
So it's my understanding that not all states do, and not all occasions are preceded by a grand jury. Why is that? And how do you think the grand jury having a grand jury, if you were to have something against you, how will that change
So
a person's experience?
some states do have a grand jury. And like, for instance, I have family members who have actually had indictments, quote unquote, by a grand jury, but they were not present in that grand jury. And so therefore it was still an unlawful arrest. So the purpose of the grand jury is to stop prosecutors from having hasty and malicious charging. So anytime an accusation is brought against you, you have a right to be there to hear what accusations are being presented. So we have these backdoor behind, not public grand juries that are happening, and these people don't know what exactly they're being charged with or accused of by the state prosecutors. So, this has been going on for a very, very long time, and unfortunately now we're starting to see why. And the main reason why I believe this is going on, this is all, look, I got to say this just for a second for anyone that's listening. Everything that I'm telling you, I'm saying it only because I have learned it from Tanawa Downing. Okay. There's just not anything that I was so smart to come up with myself. So you can go to Tanawa Downing and you would be able to listen to hours and hours and hours of this type of information. This has been going on in our country for a very long time. So they have found a way. So back in the slave days, right? You had the slaves after the Civil War, the slaves were supposedly free. But if you look at the 13th Amendment, it says that slavery shall not exist except as punishment for a crime. So slavery still exists in America in the form of people going to prison. And then when you start looking into the slave labor, because that's what's happening, slave labor in these prisons where they're taking the prisoners, they're paying them, a few dollars per day to go and work, sew clothes or make food or, build, microchips or whatever. So this is a form of slavery that they have called justice. So just go look at the 13th Amendment. It says slavery should not exist except. That means it does exist.
Except, yeah. Okay. So that kind of gives me like this brief overview as to grand juries. And so let's see, we got Kathleen Hebert in the chat here, who states that 14 states eliminated grand juries, 28 states considered grand juries to be optional. And so, and then she also adds the constitutional duty is due process. Due process denied causes harm to innocent people. And I agree with both of those statements. But what I really want to kind of ask you, and you stated that you learned a lot from Tanawa, and I know that having known you for a while, my question for you is, A, what are you doing actively in this moment in order to further this cause?
Right now,
go ahead, answer that first, and I'll ask you the next one.
Okay. Right now, it is all public awareness. If you think about, and I'm not trying to get off track here, but let's just think about CPS for example.
Well,
you have
save
CPS.
Save that for the next question, because that's my follow-up question on this. So we shall be free in 2025. What is it, without much explanation or background story, what is it that you guys are physically actively doing? And what does that look like?
Right. Yeah. So right now is public awareness, and it's, to some degree when we go, so right now we're serving the county commissioners and the city council. We're providing them notice that they can no longer continue to pay public officials to commit a crime. So when we say commit a crime, what we're saying is, if you have a prosecuting attorney or a police officer that is charging by way of information as opposed to an indictment, a grand jury indictment, then that is unconstitutional and it's unlawful.
Okay,
so that's
what you guys are doing, is you're going.
Yeah, we're providing the notice. I've had this question, what good is that going to do? Well, for one, a lot of these people, and I see it on their faces, when we go to these county commissioners, city council meetings, and when I'm up there talking and I'm reading the script that Tanawa put together, I can see it on a lot of their faces, and it's either one of two responses. One is surprise. They have no clue what I'm talking about, and they're surprised to hear that this might be a thing. They have no clue what we're actually talking about. That's part of the indoctrination. The other people don't really give a damn. And, if you go back and you look at...
I would say that pretty much, we can apply that to any sort of deep thinking or change in any sort of proposed change. People either are surprised by it, that it's a problem, or don't give a shit that it's a problem. So, I mean, I think that
they don't care.
Those are pretty typical reactions to change.
Yeah, those people are very happy to get us. So we had the video out of Davenport, I think it was Davenport, where the guy was like, you are Fort Wayne, Indiana, right? Fort Wayne, Indiana. And the guy was like, you are done talking.
So we kind of lost you a little bit because traveling while streaming is dynamic. While we wait for her to kind of unfreeze a little bit. Kathleen says that corporate actors have taken over our public offices by global policy, systematically denying constitutional due process. And that is well said, Kathleen. I totally agree. And really what I'm trying to do with this show and with Jess is there's a lot of people who have spent significant time in this sort of space and trying to understand how it, like, they understand the depths in which we have been affected by this. But I think the whole point of what I want to do with this show is to kind of baby step people into it and to understand not the not just the results of where we are, but kind of how we got here and how it kind of affects us on a very personal, individual level. And so saying like by making the statement, this is treason, though true, I think that in order to kind of get people to understand the parts that affect them and not just the concept of treason, I want to be able to walk people through like Jess's personal story and then what she is doing currently. So in case it was kind of glitching out and you missed it, basically what she said is she's going to county commissioners and she is informing these people that when you do not use the correct due process, her example being the indictment through a grand jury in which you are present, then it is unconstitutional. And therefore, public officials who are not addressing this by either making it mandatory or by punishing those or indicting, if I dare say, indicting those who are not allowing for this process to happen, they're being given notice. So that's what Jess is doing. She's giving notice that this is illegal to not have this specific process, this very specific process in place. Not like you suck, but she's being very, very specific about the process that needs to take place in order for it to be constitutional, in order to charge anybody with anything. So a capital crime or incarceration for a year or more. And then by giving notice to these people that what they are doing by not enforcing this process, there are going to be grave consequences for that. And so I love that we are having this conversation because I think we are not, we're just not informed enough as Americans to be able to understand this. So Jess, you'll have to go back and watch the replay and see what you missed. Well, because you cut out there for a little bit, but I think I did a pretty good job of kind of just explaining what it is that you're doing. You're informing these people of the process that needs to take place, and you're telling them that if they do not begin to put this indictment process in place in which the person who is being convicted is present for that grand jury indictment, which happens before you go to court, before you do anything else, before they can even charge you with anything, then they are committing a crime by allowing this to continue. Is that right? Kind of nutshelly? Okay.
Yep,
and then what I would like to do is Kathleen has some really great points that she is putting into the chat, but I want to take it back to like a super personal level and understand, like, we can say things like treason, we can say Fifth Amendment requires people to assemble, to speak truth to the body, like some of these things that Kathleen is saying, they're very like broad spectrum points that she's making. And so I kind of want to understand, like, how does it affect, like, this was the question. How did you get here? How did you get here? What got you to this point where you're doing this Freedom 2025 tour, informing these people that their process is unconstitutional and illegal and that they need to change it? Why are you notifying these people? What in your life led you to this point, if you'd be willing to share just kind of the highlights of why this is so important to you personally and how this change can affect you personally and people who have experienced things similar to what you've experienced?
Sure. So in 2021, I said that I was not going to be a part of a domestic abusive relationship any longer. I asked for a divorce. We separated in August of that year, 2021, and then he filed for a divorce in February of 2022. Or I think it was January, nonetheless. So we didn't have our first hearing until January of 2023. And then through that year, we proceeded. Now, we actually went through mediation, and together, we had agreed to having about a 40-60 split with the kids, with me being the 60%. Which I was the school mom. I would get them up, take them to school, do all stuff. He actually had 3-day weekends. And then, Thanksgiving and Christmas, he had what came down to about 60%. We get in front of this judge, and 2 miles left. For whatever reason, in August of 2023, this judge says, you know what, Mom? You're only going to have about 13% with your son and 50% with your daughter. So the judge made me the weekend parent of my son every other weekend, which was completely erroneous. There was no lawful legal reason why she would remove my son from me. So that was when really my son was removed.
So just for clarity, what you're illustrating in this story is that the judge was able to make a truly arbitrary sort of decision based on her brief interaction with you and your ex, and she was able to say, you know what, for reasons I don't have to explain, I'm making it so because I said so, and you have to abide by this custody agreement.
Yep,
without
100%.
really any sort of preamble or justification. And for those of you who don't, let me take a minute and kind of relate this to maybe something some people have seen. I know you've been too busy to watch this, but a lot of people have been watching the Karen Read trial. A lot of people know that judges do have this power to make these arbitrary decisions, and the legal argument that they can use is because I said so. And millions of people watch that Karen Read trial. Millions of people understand that because I said so can happen, but there's a lot of people with eyes on judges right now saying, but should it? But should it? Which is one of the reasons why I wanted to also have this chat with you, is because you're really addressing the but should it problem that we're all asking ourselves if we've followed some of these court cases out of Massachusetts. And this is happening everywhere. This is not just a Massachusetts problem. It's not just a Tennessee problem. It's not just an Indiana problem. This is a countrywide problem that judges have these power of because I said so. And anybody can be indicted and have a grand jury convened with or without their knowledge, and then taken to jail and then have to prove their innocence. Even though we're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, let's be real, anybody who watches true crime knows that it's pretty much the other way around. And I think we just got over this very public fight that we watched, where somebody who not only was able to show that the prosecution didn't have a case against them, but also to prove their factual innocence, and they did it in a very public way. And so I think that it really does relate to that situation. They're definitely parallel to each other, if not directly adjacent. And so you had said that the judge arbitrarily made this decision. Her reason was not a legal argument, but because I said so. And so here you are, a mom who's had, a lot of things go on with a former partner, and now you don't have as much access to your kids as you should have. And that's regardless of whether or not he should or should not, which we can get into that on another episode. We'll just kind of skim over that. But the fact of the matter is, it was taken from you without any sort of evidence on why it should have been taken from you.
Right, 100%. So that was in August of 2023. We kept that entire, parenting plan. I was visiting with my son up until February of 2025. So in November of 2024, my sister sends me a message. She says, you have to get on TikTok. There's other moms that are going through the exact same thing that you are. I get on TikTok. I had been completely off of social media for 7 years. So I get on TikTok and I start seeing all of these just horrific stories. And I was like, I have no idea what the hell is going on, but I want to figure it out. So got involved with a group, and I started listening to their stories. In January of this year, I created a constitutional Google form. All of the questions that were on there were based off of things that I had learned and listened to Tanawa. In 2 weeks, we had over 1,000 responses from parents listing all of their constitutional violations that had gone on in their family court. This had nothing to do with the criminal side. Now, I had been arrested in 2024, but that was so far out of my mind at that point. I didn't even consider it because everything was dropped and dismissed and expunged and whatever. So to me, it was a nothing, but it
So,
actually is very much so something. And what I
so what I'm
found was
hearing,
that hold on just a second. What I found was that the majority of these mothers that are going through family court are not only losing their children, but at some point they have been jailed. And the numbers, the last time that I ran the data, which we have more people now, but the last time that I ran it, we're sitting at about 65% of moms going through the same thing that at some point have been arrested.
so highlight is you're in a relationship, you get married, you have a couple of kids, you realize that this relationship is not going to work out. So then you go to a family court, which you believe to be, objective. And then all of a sudden, you don't have access to your kids anymore because a judge has made an arbitrary decision. And that is not just happening to one or two people, but it's happening to a majority of people who have interactions with family court. And we lost her again for a minute. Hopefully I got that right. Okay.
Yeah, that's true. And there's people much more credible than I am that have run the statistics and run the data, and they are saying this exact same thing that I'm saying. And the majority of the people now it's against mothers. Now, this is unfortunately a pendulum swing from back in the 80s and 90s when the dads were the weekend parents. The dads were the ones that were being warred against at that point. And that was, again, the destruction of the family. But if you look in the 80s and 90s, dads were the ones that they had to leave the house. They only got to see the kids every other weekend. And they were the ones getting hit with the child support. I mean, to a point where they couldn't even, barely could support themselves. The pendulum has swung. Unfortunately, in America, we all know that we can never just, come to an even keel. So the pendulum is now swinging to the complete other side where more mothers are losing access to their children. More mothers are being hit with the child support that the fathers used to be hit with. That's putting them into a state of deprivation. I mean, we have mothers we have moms right now that literally are homeless because of the state that the court put them into. This is not because these people don't have ambition. They don't have the gumption to get up and go do something or get a job or provide for their families or their children. It has nothing to do with that. And my case is no different. I am speaking on the side of the majority at this point, and this is based off of hard statistical data that I have ran within my small group of 1,200 people. In addition to when you look at the other statistics that some of these doctors and psychologists, forensic investigators are coming out with, this is what's happening, 100%. So they're putting you into a state. Then guess what? Mom goes back to court because she wants to see her kids, and now you don't have a house, and you don't have a job. So how are you going to be able to provide for your children? Well, I can if the goddamn court would get off my back and let me be a mom. If the court would stop stealing, retirement accounts and putting sanctions on mothers. I mean, I have seen with my own eyes hundreds of thousands of dollars that these courts are sanctioning. And I say sanctioning very lightly. My ex's attorney wasn't so, covert, because he came out and he wrote on his last motion that mothers should be taxed.
Okay. So
I think I lost you guys.
No, I can still hear you. Can you still hear me? Because we heard all that.
Yeah, I got you.
We heard all of that. And so what I'm hearing you say is the transition from this to like this broader spectrum of people who are being accused of crimes. You're saying that this originated from a family court situation, and not just your personal family court situation, from a broader family court situation that you came in contact with. And you're seeing that not only is it happening to like women now, but quite possibly the same sort of situation was happening to men back in the 80s and 90s, statistically speaking, where people are being kind of pushed out of their means because of the way that the family court is operating. Is that a kind of high level sort of idea of what you're trying to convey here? And the hypothesis that you're working off of is that because there's lack of true due process, and there is like judicial oversight, but because this process isn't happening, this problem is more insidious than just a couple of judges in like focused, small places around in like this isn't just like a pocket of problems. This is a systemic problem that you're addressing, which is why you've kind of stepped away from just the family court situation into this sort of like criminal court, because you're watching
Yeah.
women, and
It's
you've
everywhere.
seen, you've
I mean,
seen men in the
there's
past go from
3,000.
being in like a civil family court into now they are now being unhomed, no more jobs because they're being arrested for things that are they're not given their due process for. And that's why you guys have stepped into this like realm of informing and serving, giving notice. Yes, giving notice is the word that you used. Giving notice to all of these jurisdictions and districts that what they're doing is wrong across the board, be it like family court, criminal court, doesn't matter. They're not giving people their proper due process, right? We lost her again for a second. Streaming is dynamic, people. Streaming is dynamic. She'll be back. I know she'll be back. I appreciate all this extra information that Kathleen is putting into the chat. I hope you guys are kind of listening to it and understanding that this is something that people are very passionate about, working very hard for. And I think that we live in a society where we bitch a lot. We bitch a lot about what we don't like. And we can bitch about what we don't like, but why I really want to have Jess here is because like she's actually like doing the thing. And so I mean, I think we can all sit around behind our computers, behind our phones, and we can bitch and we can moan and we can be like, this isn't right. But what I really admire Jess and Tanawa for is that you guys are taking these, I have like an itchy eyeball. You guys are taking these physical steps to make a difference, regardless of what the fallout might be in your personal lives. And so thank you. Thank you for doing that, for one. And also, how can we help? How can we help you?
Let me talk about that for just a second. So me being on this tour and on the road, this was not my first step. My first step was actually back in February of this year. So I took the arguments that Tanawa was teaching about, and I applied them to my court case. And I said, you know what? He's freaking right. Once I figured out that there were 25 other families in that same county dealing with that same judge who the same thing had happened to, these moms had been completely deprived of their children, that's when I decided, like, you know what? This is done. So I found my first notice on February 7th. My son was taken from my home on February 12th. Now, if you think about the timing of that court in Blount County, Tennessee, they could not give me a hearing for 19 months, right? They were too busy. They couldn't find any place on the docket for us to figure all this out. But yet, when I start calling out these judges and I start exposing the criminal actions that are happening in their court, the fact that there have been fraud, that have been tainted from the very beginning, that there could not be a valid order, everything was based off what Tana was saying. If you have an unlawful action in the beginning, it cannot create a lawful action in the end. Once I started doing that, they were able to have 2 hearings within 5 days and remove my son from my home. Fast forward a few weeks. After they did that, I said, you know what, I'm going to leave the state with my daughter. And I did. And at that point, I found out that Tanawa was, he needed to be back in Tennessee and Kentucky and West Virginia. So I agreed to take him back. Fast forward a few weeks, they ended up coming and taking my daughter. Now, they've temporarily removed my parental rights. A right cannot be just, taken away, but they've removed my parental rights and all my custodial rights to the paternal grandparents. And I have a restraining order against both my children against me, so I cannot talk to them. So
because you're calling out, and that is not because of like you being an unfit parent, it's because you're calling out the court system.
Yes, 100%. And this is another statistic that I see. all of these mothers that started, and dads, and I don't mean to exclude the fathers.
But you kind of address that with that statistic. Like in the 80s and 90s, this was a dad's problem, and now this is a mother's problem, which makes it both of our problems. And it's just the statistics that we're seeing. So you're generalizing based on that, and that's fine. But it's any parent that raises a stink and doesn't, and I'm going to boil it down to, doesn't have the money to continue fighting in family court and is asking for certain sort of considerations because they have the financial lower hand. So whether that be the mother or whether that be the father, that's the problem. It just so happens that statistically, right now, it's female or people who identify as mothers or the
there's a lot
stay-at-home
of
parent or the person who doesn't have that sort of baked-in income to pay for the cost of fighting through family court, going to all the extra things. They can't take the time away from work. So even aside from costs, they may not have the work freedom or the type of work that allows them to be able to leave work, to do these exchanges, to do these extra mediations, to take these extra steps to prove themselves, quote unquote, worthy as a parent. Is that accurate?
Well, yes, but okay, and I'm only speaking off of the small list that I have of 1,200 people and the mothers out of that list. But when you take into consideration the other statistics that other people have done, what they're finding is that the parent who is the abusive parent, they are getting the kids, or the kids are going into state custody. So what we are seeing at large is really the fit parent or the protective parent is the one that is losing the child.
Yeah,
Now,
I
this
heard a
is
very
by,
interesting podcast that Amanda Knox did, and she was talking to one of those
yes,
forensic, what do they call it?
yeah.
Forensic child psychologist.
No, it was a forensic interviewer, and what she said
Okay.
was that her own statistics was that 99% of the children who had disclosed sexual abuse, 99% of those children that she did these interviews with went back to the abuser. And these were
That
children
is a
from,
staggering.
yeah.
Do you know if there was a reason why? Do we know why that's happening, or is this one of the things that we're like trying to fight to figure out why
Well,
that's happening like that? Or is that like part
yeah,
of your? Is that part of your battle? Is
no.
to figure out why it's happening and put a stop to it?
Well, yeah, I mean, we know why it's happening. It's happening because they have to continue to create customers for the next generation. So whenever they harm these children by pulling them away from one or both parents, putting them into CPS custody or foster care or whatever, they have to create that trauma in that child so that in the next generation, they will have a customer.
I was gonna
So,
say, can we? Because now you're into the realm of things that that I kind of geek out about is this sort of double tap on what you just said. It's the creation of customers. So trauma breeds trauma, which means the people who have witnessed poor relationships or poor ability to find middle ground or mediation are now getting into relationships. They grow up, they get into relationships. They then find themselves in a spot where they are no longer wanting to be in a relationship because they chose the wrong partner or they're unable to communicate because of what they've been through as a child. And now they're going through divorce proceedings and their children are being removed from the home and the whole
well,
cycle starts
it
over again.
doesn't
Is that
even,
what you're,
yeah,
because
it
that's what that
doesn't
sounds
even.
like to me.
Yes, but it doesn't even have to be. I mean, that's not quite as sinister as what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the 12 million children that have been removed from the love and care of their parents by state actors who are accusing these parents of being unfit. Those 12 million children being removed from their parents have an 84% likelihood that they are going to be incarcerated. So now you have the loop back into the first Fifth Amendment Clause 1, where we already established that now they are, for whatever reason, indicting with absence of a grand jury, without the grand jury. But why? So they can put these people
Okay.
into prisons. And now you have a system where the prisons are getting paid by the state or by the federal government. The states are getting paid. The state is making money off of those prisoners that should not be there. And then when you consider, wait, let me finish. Then when you
I,
consider foster care, okay, you have foster care and CPS. Foster care is getting paid, and these parents are getting paid to literally raise someone else's children. I have mothers, too many to even count. I have mothers who literally went to the state saying, you know what? I was sick. I lost my job, whatever. I just need some financial assistance so that I can get through this hard time in my life. I need an extra $600 a month, $1,000 whatever. Next thing you know, instead of the state fucking paying the mom to help her get out of that bad situation financially, now they have CPS come into the house, remove the children. Now the children are going to a foster care family, and that foster care family is making $2,000 to $4,000 a month to raise the parent, to raise the fit parent's child, when this mother just needed a few months to get back on her feet, or this father just needed, just a little bit of government assistance. It is unbelievably disgusting. I saw the other day on Indeed.com out of somewhere in Tennessee, they were offering to pay someone $100,000. It was a job to be a foster care parent. $100,000 a year to be a foster care parent, and you got a kickback of $2,000 for every new child that you would foster. Don't tell me that is not freaking child trafficking. These people are incentivized to take our children and put them in foster care. There is no incentive to take these children and keep them in the family and get that family back to a healthy state. And why is that? Not necessarily because the state isn't profiting on Title 4D or blah, 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 or whatever else, but because you would at that point ice that next generation of customers for this United States of America.
And I kind of laughed, and it in hindsight it was a little bit inappropriate. But what I'm laughing at is the sheer preposterousness of the cycle that you very clearly described, and also an admiration of your passion for this, because here's somebody who has lost her children, and not only is she saying, how can I address my kids and get my kids back in fairness, but like, how can I break down this cycle? And I just want to bring everybody back to what you said at first about creating this next generation of customers, which I think is a very powerful illustrating way to describe the children who have been in foster care, who are more likely to be incarcerated, etc. And so there's so much to kind of unpack about what you said, and that's why we're going to do this discussion weekly, so we can unpack this a little bit more in detail, because we're coming up on 37 minutes, and I want people to get enough information and get to know you and stay engaged and ask themselves questions and not disregard what you're saying. But I want to what you said in that last statement. I highly recommend that everybody go back and listen to like the last 5 minutes again, because you very clearly illustrated to us the problem and the cycle of the problem. And that's why you guys are doing this tour of giving notice to all these places that they have to put in place this process that is actually constitutional, which is the process of a grand jury indictment in which the person who is being accused is present for.
Right.
Correct?
I mean, the process is already there. All they have to do is actually follow the law, which is the Constitution of the United States. So you had,
So what do you think? What do you think what do you think will change? I mean, obviously, creating a shakeup is the only way to create change.
Right.
But if these indictments were put in place, what's to keep the powers that be in that indictment process from just adding an indictment to this already kind of gross cycle of creating customers for themselves in the future? Like, how does putting that in place and having the person present, like, what's the change that we will see as a society if all the states put that in place and actually enforce it and actually let it to be? Because I see right now, through my experience and my views, that, people can still push through because, Karen Reed had a grand jury indictment. She wasn't present for it, but she still had to sit in court twice, spent 3 years of her life trying to prove her innocence, even though she's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. How does that flip the script so that things like that don't happen again? And how do we How does what you're doing actually make that change once that process is put in place? Like, wave your
We would,
magic wands, say that you make that difference. Everybody puts that and enforces that process in place. We get some people out of power who are not following that process, who are resistant to that change. And now that thing is in place. And so what changes? What does it look like?
we would see a healthier America. We would see people that are not turning to drugs or alcohol. I mean, when you consider what they're doing on the grand jury indictment, where the state is coming and accusing these people of a crime, absent of the grand jury, they're doing the same thing in family court. They're accusing you, accusing me of being an unfit parent. So all of these things do what? So all of these things, once they go away, then we'll have a healthier America. We're not going to be deprived of all these things. So if you consider the majority of people that are in prison, there were crimes they're like drug crimes. That's not a crime against anybody. It's just the state decided that something was illegal. We have people still serving time for, marijuana. But marijuana in Alabama, for instance, was just legalized on July 1st. But we saw people serving time for that. So what I'm saying is that if there's a change, like what I think what you're asking is that what would be the positive outcome of all of these people actually listening
Well, that is
and
the positive
adhering to the
outcome.
Constitution?
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking?
Well, and yes, but also I want to take it like back one step. Like, obviously that'd be a positive outcome, but like, is it because we're making it harder for the government or the state to charge people with things by adding in this constitutional right of a grand jury indictment with you present? And so therefore there's going to be less like
Yes.
charges put against
Well,
people because you're
yes.
making it harder for them to have, like, they have to have a higher burden of proof in order to make sure that what they're doing. So how, and just to play devil's advocate, how does adding more steps to the process then unclog our already very clogged judicial system where everybody's just kind of like at a snail's pace to get justice?
Well, I don't really see very much justice going on, but
Yes, fair. But let's again, I'm trying to be devil's
nonetheless.
advocate in that. Like, if somebody was to push back against you, what does that look like? Like, how do you say that adding more steps
So
to this process is more
operating as a
just?
business. The government is operating as a business, but yet they're not producing anything good. What
Right.
are they actually producing?
Well,
So
how does the indictment change and take away their power to operate as a business? Is what I'm asking, I guess. Then is that I'm sorry. Let me repeat the question. So how does adding that constitutional right of a grand jury indictment with the person who's being accused present, how does that take away the government's power to treat us all as and treat the judicial system as a business? How does that take away their power in that?
Well, okay, so they're not going to have, the states are not going to be making as much money with the prison and the incarceration rates, and then the foster care when they remove the kids and all of that stuff. But
And they're not
I
going to be
think
making as much money because it's going to cost them more money to indict these people than what they're going to be getting out of them. Is that the both sides of that equation?
I don't really care. I'm not really focused on how they're going to make the money. They're still going to be taxing us. They're still going to be doing all their shady shit and all that stuff. But what they need to do, if they really care about the people, is not be focused so much on the money, but as the societal problem. So
Okay.
these people, most of the people that are incarcerated, most of the parents that were deemed unfit, that's not what these people don't need to be in prison. They need to be somewhere where their hurts and their trauma as a child can be addressed. They need to be in some type of a psychological therapy program so that they're not hurting enough to turn to drugs anymore. So now we start creating someone that is healthy and well within themselves to go out and then produce something to as a society. Regarding the families, it's the same way. If we can heal these families and keep the family intact, then you're going to have a child that's not going to be, trauma focused when they're an adult. So the government has completely got this all backwards. Why can't they look at, there's got to be some type of an economic projection for, let's say we have a healthy America, and let's say that the 700,000 prisoners that are currently incarcerated are actually out working and paying the taxes, even though, I don't really care about whatever. I'm not going to go down that rabbit trail, but so
Yeah,
we have
we've got
people
many episodes ahead of us. So we can go there
that are
eventually.
contributing to society in that way. And then you have all of these other children. What about these mothers? I have doctors and nurses and teachers and bankers and financial advisors. All of these moms with those titles in the professional world are now homeless or on the brink of homelessness simply because of the court, simply because of family court. Now, if family court could get out of the way and not be focused on how can we make money in the next generation, how can we make money right now off of foster care and Title 4D and all the erroneous things that they put in place. How about if you just get those parents back to working, back to their $150,000 a year job, and stop trying to steal it directly out of their pockets by way of court sanctions or taxes? That's what a healthy America would look like. We're not going to have crime as much as what we do now. I mean, the crime happens because people are hurting.
I think that I know that and I have a lot to digest, but I think that ending on that note of hope, and leaving some curiosities, like I want to come back and have more discussion with you, and hopefully we'll be able to figure out how to stream this to your channel. You are on the move, right? Doing this very important work, but I love that. That notion of hope that you just gave us, that if we do get to this point, we do have a happier country. We have better productive people. We have people who actually care about, um, feel like they're seen and that they're important and that they are contributing. And um, I just want to take a minute and thank you and thank everybody in the chat and thank Tanawa for driving so that we're able to have this conversation. So that we're able to have this conversation. And I want to have more, and I want to bring Tanawa on too. And I want to be able to have these conversations where not only are we talking about what the problem is, but talking about steps that we can take as people. Because there's such a broad spectrum that you covered today that I think everybody kind of has their own little piece of that they can contribute to. Not
Right.
everybody is willing or able to take on the enormity of the problem, but I think we can all contribute to a piece, whether it be because you know somebody who's been incarcerated, because you know somebody who has been falsely accused, because you know a parent who has had their children taken away, because you know somebody who has had to plead guilty even though they maybe weren't because they could not fight the battles that
Right.
come with, we are all affected by this in some way or another. And
Yep.
and I think that it makes
Absolutely.
us kind of look at these people who we have thought of as quote unquote guilty in these, kind of lesser crimes. True crime world is blowing up. Everybody's obsessed with true crime. We're all talking about murders. We're all talking about these things. But what about these other people, right?
Hmm.
That are also a part of that system, that because their crimes aren't as um, sensational, they're not getting as much attention, but they are still getting the short end of the stick with our judicial system. Everywhere from family court. At this point, from what I'm hearing you say, like family court, and then we've got criminal court. I would the best thing we have going for us right now is civil court, which whoever thought, civil court, at least that's just people who can afford to kind of rip each other apart or ripping each other apart there, right?
Yeah.
Um,
No,
in in
it's
in some ways, but it sounds like there is hope, and we can all contribute to it. And also, we can speak to like what's on the other side of that. And like I said, I'm really not here to have these conversations with you to complain about what's going wrong, because I think we can all agree in some way or another. Like I said, we've all seen how something has gone wrong, and this is not just a single you or me problem, or our cousin Joe who got a DUI, or somebody who was charged with involuntary manslaughter or somebody who's had their kids removed, they're not bad people. This is a systemic problem, but it is solvable, and there are steps that we can all take. And so the more we kind of take this apart and pick it apart and talk about the changes that we can make and get creative as humans, like you can fight or you can freeze or you can collaborate and get creative. And I really want to continue these conversations because I think that you are a symbol of what it takes to be that person. And we don't all have to sacrifice as much as you have, but we can collaborate with you, we can get creative, and we can make change in a really big way. So,
Well, when you are operating in the sense that this is where you're supposed to be, it doesn't really feel like a sacrifice. I gotta say that. Because I don't feel like I'm
fair.
sacrificing anything. I feel like I'm just kind of doing, wherever God put me in this point in my life, I feel like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So it doesn't feel like a sacrifice. I feel like I'm supposed to be doing this.
I love that.
And here I am. So yeah, we're trying to find people. Can I do a little plug here?
Please, I was going to ask you if there's anything you wanted to plug your pluggables, as they say.
Yeah, so we need more people to step up. We're looking for 360 people to help us in serving the county commissioners and the city council across the nation. We want to be able to have 2/3 of the counties served in the next 40 days. In order to do that, we need 360 people commit to serving 6 counties. So we have
Okay.
right now, we have about 50 people who have committed to serving 6 counties, but we still need the next 310.
How do people contact you for that?
So Tanawa, Downing, and I, we are on Facebook. Probably message me if you want a response because he gets a lot of messages.
Oh, look at this. Okay, so we have a really great chat. I know you are on your phone, so you haven't been able to see them. But Auntie at Jack, he's a friend of the channel, has you, Jessica Saxton, dropped your YouTube link there. And do you have like your email address on your YouTube link?
No, nothing's on YouTube. There's not really much stuff on YouTube. So go to Facebook. It's just Jessica Saxton on Facebook. On TikTok, it is justicewithoutlimits.org is my handle.
Okay.
Justicewithoutlimits.org. But honestly, Facebook is the best way to reach me.
Listen, if somebody comments on your YouTube channel, I want in, you will figure out a way to communicate with them with that, right?
Well, yeah, that's true. But that is true. Absolutely.
And then
listen,
you can go to your YouTube channel and you can put your email address in there. They hide it. They make sure that they're not robots, and you can put that in there too. So we'll make sure that that happens.
Yeah, I'll do that. And then so every Thursday at 8:30 Eastern, we're having a training where we're going over the script. This is the same script that if you go onto my Facebook, you'll see this is what I'm saying. It's that first script that I'm saying, and then Tanawa comes behind me and he'll, kind of clarify some things and say whatever he feels like is on his heart for that time. But this script that we're doing, there's some other mothers that have stepped up. Melissa Frent has stepped up. She served someone on July 1st, and she's serving someone tomorrow. We have Crystal Salzar out of Texas. She served Randall County recently. So we have and David Altos, he recently served in Riverside, California. So we have people that are stepping up. If you want some training, if you want some one-to-one or hands-on training to go over this, why we're doing it, how to present yourself, we'll go over the scripts. You can join us on Zoom. That
Would
link
you mind
is
if I
also,
posted the email list that they can get on? Is there like an email list that they can get on so that they can get the notifications of these trainings? Do you have anything like that set up?
Yes, I will send it over to you.
I was gonna say, because I can post it either in the description of this, or if you want to say it out loud, I can just put it in the chat right now. It's up to you.
I don't have a website or a web address forwarded to that anymore. It used to be justicewithoutlimits.org, but now that's all of our other stuff. So I'll just
look at this.
I'll have to send you the direct Google form.
I'm telling you, we have really great chat. Andy here has a link for Jessica Saxton Facebook. He already found you. He's already got the link in the chat for us.
Thank you.
Use using duckduckgo.com. And there's your link right there at the bottom of the screen. So thank you, Auntie. You are fast with the links. I appreciate you. And now that is in the chat. Anybody who goes to our live chat can see these comments and pull those links. I will hopefully in the next couple of days copy and paste those off of there and pin a comment to the top of this video.
One more thing. If you want more clarification on the stuff that I have been saying, go to Tanawa Downing's TikTok. You can go there. You can just go binge on his TikTok channel for a couple hours, and all of this stuff that I attempted to explain would make a lot more sense.
Hey, listen, you have your own story. We'll get Tanoa's story as well, but I'm going to put,
Yeah,
just in
but
case you guys are curious
education.
how to spell that, I put his name in the chat there so you guys can search him on TikTok. And I think that let's get you a better presence here on YouTube, because there are a lot of people listening on YouTube. There are a lot of people looking for information on YouTube. I know that it's hard, focusing on one social media platform, but I'd love to help you guys just get those TikToks over to YouTube Shorts, and let's continue to have these conversations, Jessica. I would like to have them once a week so we can kind of see how your week has gone, see what you've accomplished, see how many people you've gotten. We will continue to set this up and make this a sort of standard thing, because I think you have a lot to say, and it's real easy in this day and age to get duped by, oh, there we go. Auntie with the links. Auntie with the links. And you've got a lot more support here than I think you know. So let's make this a regular thing. Let's take you out of the fast form sort of videos. I know you like to move fast and you hit hard, and I love that about you. And it's like getting you to sit still for a full 56 minutes that we have right now it's almost impossible. This woman is a mover and a shaker, you guys. She gets shit done. And so an hour of her time is huge, and I'm asking her to commit to an hour every week so that we can see the face behind this, and we know it's not just AI generated conspiracy theory sort of bullshit that we see. And there's a real crusaders. There's more than just Jess, but I know you the best, so that's where I start. But people, real humans out there doing things to change our world, to change our society, and not just complain about what we have, but to take steps and also inform us how we can take steps.
Yeah,
in like real and tangible ways. So I appreciate your time, Jess. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Carrie. You're so
I want to set up a time to do this again next week. Like I said, we're going to figure out how to stream it to multiple locations. If not, we'll figure it out. So I appreciate you taking the time to explain things to me and to share stories with our chat and with our audience. And hopefully this gets out further.
I appreciate you. You're so awesome.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Auntie, again, with the fast fingers and the the link sharing. Thank you to Kathleen, who showed up. We had Donna, who just showed up. I really appreciate you. Falco, I know you were doing your dishes, listening in the background. I totally appreciate you. We had Dimebag stopped by. He's from Canada, but, it's not just the United States that has, constitutional rights here. Let's see, Independent Many United. That is a show that I definitely want to get you on, and I need to get you connected with her because I think you guys could just move mountains together. She's got a nice big following. I think that we can really do some things. So all the people out there in the chat, everybody else who comes across this video, thank you for being here. Thanks for hearing us out, and we will see you next time.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Carrie.